Thank you and good morning, and I would like to thank the witnesses for being here as well as Chairman Brooks. I also appreciate the opportunity to be here and fill in for my colleague, the gentleman from New Jersey, Donald Payne, who is not here today because he has business at the White House. I'd first like to begin by extending my sympathies to those who died or were injured during the plane crash at San Francisco International Airport on this past Saturday, and to their families. And I'd like to thank our first responders, our police, fire, and emergency personnel who responded and mitigated the loss of life in that situation. This hearing is very timely because at the crash scene, we saw firsthand the role that social media can play. In fact, social media was first to provide on-the-ground reports and photos from the crash scene. It was actually the first tweet, the first information that came out was from a former AOL media and studios executive, David Yoon from Samsung, who was on the plane and tweeted a picture, relayed that he and the majority of passengers were okay. This turned out to be credible information, but also kind of set the tone for what would follow from the ground. Following what happened, survivors used Twitter, Facebook, and Path to assure loved ones that they were safe. San Francisco Airport, SFO, used social media to provide up-to-date information on response efforts, and the National Transportation Safety Board did the same with respect to its investigation. I myself, during the moments following the crash and the investigation, used social media like Twitter and Facebook to both share and learn information. And just yesterday, President Obama gave remarks at the White House in which he talked about the administration's effort and desire to encourage government to be more smarter, effective, and efficient through its use of technology. He cited FEMA's use of web apps in the aftermath of Sandy. In this new age of social media and instant communications, it shouldn't be surprising that they now play such an important role in the moments following an emergency disaster. And their use after this plane accident is a reminder of the most recent example. Just behind me, I have the same infographic that my colleague, Ms. Brooks, referred to, provided by the University of San Francisco, which provides great information on how modern technology is impacting disaster response. And I do want to highlight that 76% of those polled used social media to let people know that they were okay, 76% of folks who were in a disaster. And 18% of those folks received their information from Facebook. Much of the social media is developed and produced in Silicon Valley, and I am proud to represent Northern Silicon Valley in the Congress. What Silicon Valley companies like Google, Facebook, and Twitter are doing to help ordinary citizens volunteer, share information, and be more prepared for disasters was discussed at the first hearing in this series held last month. I applaud them for their efforts. Today, our focus will be on how government and our primary non-governmental response organization, the Red Cross, use social media in disaster situations. This will hopefully include a discussion of both the opportunities and challenges to using modern technology. Among our witnesses are Sergeant Kearse, Director of the Jersey City Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. This office has been on the forefront of interoperable communications and social media, and last month was recognized in Washington, D.C. with an International 2013 Computer World Honors Laureate for implementation of a remarkable communication and surveillance system. With its internet-based mutual link, Jersey City OEM can facilitate communications across various frequencies and types of communications, provide first responder users access to secure video systems, and enable first responders to share images of disaster and videos with hospitals and public safety officials. By integrating both social media and enhanced communications technologies into emergency response capabilities, Jersey City will be able to respond to disasters more quickly and more effectively. Although cities like Jersey City and San Francisco have proven particularly adept in integrating new technologies into its disaster preparedness plans, I understand that not every city has been just as successful. To be fair, Jersey City and San Francisco have benefited from significant grants from federal Homeland Security programs. One of our largest challenges is that as funding for these programs has been reduced, fewer cities have had the resources necessary to develop robust communication systems and to cultivate the expertise necessary to navigate and effectively integrate social media into disaster response plans. The social media in the emergency management field, a 2012 survey results study released by the National Emergency Management Association, also known as NEMA, and the nonprofit research organization CNA, which my colleague also referred to, indicates that although local governments consider themselves moderately familiar with social media, the primary barrier to emergency management agencies' use of social media is a lack of dedicated personnel, on the ground. Additionally, there appears to be a generation gap when it comes to using social media on the part of the public and some emergency managers. It's hard to use social media to aid in a disaster response if you cannot spare the personnel to do the work or you don't have anyone who understands the technology. In other words, we still have a lot of catching up to do. Another challenge is that there's undeniably a socioeconomic component with respect to use and access to social media. Some Americans, particularly those who are low income, simply don't have the same access to the internet, smartphones, or Wi-Fi. We can't ignore the impact of the digital divide as we begin to integrate social media into disaster response activities. We can't leave them behind or without information. Finally, for the government to best utilize social media, it's not just about putting information on Twitter and Facebook. Agencies need to be providing data in a usable, open-source format so the high-technology companies like Google can easily and quickly incorporate it into their web pages, apps, and other portals. I look forward to discussing with our witnesses the challenges that are ahead, highlighting the successes, and looking forward to what we can do to make sure that we're ready to respond to the next disaster. Thank you.